Teenage moods getting you down, we've got you covered tonight. Welcome to Empowered Kids TV Village Talk. You're here because you know that every family has the potential to be great, and you're willing to push the boundaries of your mindset so that you can create the family of your dreams. Today, we've got a question from Suzanne, and Suzanne writes, ooh, I have a 13-year-old daughter who is obviously going through the dreaded teenage years. So I'm trying to be patient with her and let her have more freedom and responsibilities, but gradually. My husband is a lot more firm than me, and I often find myself in the middle of an argument trying to please them both. Any advice on how to handle the would be Any advice on how to handle this would be appreciated, as I'm totally fed up and I feel like the situation could damage all of our relationships. Thanks in advance. Now, this is a tough one, but we've got an amazing parenting coach joining us today to help us answer. Janet Philbin is a licensed clinical social worker with 28 years of experience. She is a certified conscious parenting coach, practitioner, certified hypnotherapist, a certified master Anre energy healer, and a certified intuitive counselor. She is passionate about teaching and helping parents to awaken within them so that they can help develop strong connections with their children and themselves. Janet's unique style combines her years of clinical counseling, parenting coaching, hypnosis, spirituality, and energy work into a successful private practice providing psychotherapy and hypnotherapy. Her passion is helping people heal from the inside out. She's an expert in helping her clients uncover and heal the issues of the inner child, which is influencing their adult life and their parenting. So, Janet, welcome to Village Talk.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
This is a challenging question, and we were just having a little chuckle before that this could go anywhere, right? And I think for a lot of parents, there's two things in this for me. There is the moods, and how do you deal with all that comes with the teenage years? And I think sometimes we can have a lot of preconceived notions that might be self-fulfilling when we think about teenage years.
Yeah.
But also there's the dynamic of different parenting styles through the stages. So I'm hoping you'll be able to dive in and help us answer this question.
Thanks. I'm going to do my best. As I took a lot of time trying to understand this question and making sure that I hit all the salient points. And what I realized in reading this question is that there's no straight answer, because this is a multifaceted question, because it's about your daughter, it's about your husband, it's about yourself, and it's about the relationship between you and your husband and the relationship between the three of you. So what I hear when I listen to this question underneath all of this is a lot of fear and worry that maybe you're going to make a mistake. Maybe you're not going to handle it right. What if my relationship with my husband gets damaged? What if my relationship with my child gets damaged? And I hear you putting all the pressure of everyone's relationships on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. So that leads me to question, how do we learn that? Like, you brought that story forward, right? You learned that somewhere, that it was your responsibility to take care of all of the relationships. And if you make a mistake, somehow the relationships would fall apart, get stressed, and then that would be on your shoulders too. That's a lot of pressure. And in reality, none of us are responsible for anyone else's feelings or emotions. But when we're doing this, when we're worried about everybody else, when we're worried about what's not happening in the now, but instead what's happening in the future, all we do is create a lot of anxiety for ourselves. So as you worry about what this is going to do to the future of your relationship with your husband and your child, what you're actually doing is creating a lot of anxiety in the now, and you're robbing yourself of the moments of now. And so as a conscious parenting coach, one of the key principles is connection over correction. And we want to always begin to ask, what is it that your daughter's actually asking for? Have you stopped and listened? Really, what is she asking you for? Is it really something out of the realm of possibilities? Or does it feel really foreign to you because you were never allowed to ask for things as a child? Or if you did ask, you were told no, so you stopped. So we really want to first understand, what are they asking for, and then find a way to connect with them. And before you even give an answer, listen deeply. You know, you're asking to stay out an hour past your curfew with your friends. Tell me more about why. What's happening that this time you want to do that, when last week coming home at 9 o'clock was good enough? What's shifted? What's changed? Maybe she's afraid she's missing out on something. Maybe she's worried about getting judged by her friends. We don't know what's going on. So if we just have this knee-jerk reaction and we want to say no because we're afraid, because we're bringing our own story into the present, and we're shutting her down before we listen to what she's really asking for, you're missing out on great opportunities to connect. And now your husband, who wants to give her free rein, might be afraid of having boundaries. So he just wants to say yes, believing that, well, if I just say yes, she's going to love me more, right? Then I don't have to be the bad guy. So we're also discussing boundaries here, and how boundaries are super important, right? Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I think we can get so wrapped up in the dynamic that it might seem simple and logical when you take a step back, but when you're wrapped up in it, you miss all of those signals.
Yeah, and they're nuances. These are little tiny nuances of your relationships, right? So we want to listen deeply, and then we need to understand, what are the boundaries? What are the boundaries in the family? So you need to have a separate conversation with your husband about boundaries. What does he feel the boundaries need to be? What do you feel the boundaries need to be? And come up with a framework of what the boundaries would look like if. And then you go back to your daughter together and present the boundaries, because she's 13. So she does get to, at 13, have some input on boundaries. At 13, developmentally, your child is looking to individuate. That's normal. Peer groups are going to become important. That's normal. But we want them to always know we're safe to come home to. So if we just lay down the law without giving room for conversation and explanation, then what you're going to create is, you're going to set up a pattern of giving her a reason to not be truthful, because she won't be able to get what she wants, because she won't be able to trust that she can come to you with these requests. So each request has to be looked at individually, not based on what happened last time or what you're afraid might happen in the future. And give her an opportunity to trust you, and you an opportunity to trust her, because you're going into uncharted territories in the teenage years, and 13 is only the beginning. So think of 13 as building foundations for trust, building foundations for a co-creation of boundaries that are in alignment within yourself, within your husband, and within her. Because the family is a team. And when you work together as a team, everybody can win. Because there are going to be things you have to say no to, right? We're going to have boundaries that are firm, like a concrete wall. But those are usually about safety. Right?
I love that, Janet. And you know what I love about what you're saying here is that it's an in the moment thing. It's not a one and done thing. And I also love that you're saying, recognize that you are laying the foundation. So my kids and I think, have a very, like, at this stage of our journey, I would say we have a very close and connected relationship most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And a few weeks ago, I have a now 14-year-old, and I was in a very rushed and disconnected from myself space. So I was stressed out. I couldn't wait to get to bed. And I said to him, it's late and you need to get to bed. in a very sort of commanding tone, which is not usual for us. And I saw the look come across his face of, I'm not going to listen to you. I was horrified. I was horrified in the moment. I was like, no, we can't be here yet. And I felt all of my wounding got triggered. I felt myself move to that place of what would be automatic parenting based on how I grew up. And I took myself into my bedroom and I closed the door and I'm like, you're not allowed to come out of here until you feel better about it. And I didn't talk to him about it until the next day. I just left him.
Yeah.
And then the next day, we had that conversation in a very connected way about why rest was important for him and for his body, in a way that he had input, right? It wasn't just me cracking down, going, this is your bedtime, but that we had input and we shared. And I think it's important, that point that you're making, where it's an in the moment thing, but it's also the foundation for what will come. Because if we don't have the relationship where we can work out the solutions as a team now in the early stages, as more complex issues come up for us, we're going to be in trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sleep is a great one too, because parents, they have to get 10 hours of sleep. Well, how do you know that their body actually needs 10 hours of sleep, right? So that's one of the things about rest. If we're going to come to that with a place of alignment, well, maybe your body needs 8 hours, but he's actually really good with 6, and he knows when to turn off the light and go to bed. And that's another part of building up trust with our kids. So no matter what the boundary is, that we're building trust. And again, we have to know which boundaries need a hard line and which boundaries we can be flexible on. If it's something to do with safety, like wearing a bicycle helmet or a seatbelt, that's solid.
Yeah.
But if it's curfew or what time to go to bed, or, can you have dessert before dinner, or what time to start homework? Do you have to be so strict? Where do you give the kids choice? So when they feel they have choice in one area of their life, when the boundary has to be hard in another, they're not feeling constricted everywhere. Yeah. So we want to really engage them in the process. And then when we get stuck, when we really, really get stuck, it's up to us to ask ourselves some questions about why we're stuck. Like in this question, it was the dreaded teenage years. My thought was, what makes it dreaded? Why do you come to 13 as dreaded? Was there something that happened in your life at 13 that you want to forget, that when you look back, you feel dread, or you felt dread going through it? And that's when our inner child gets triggered, and we bring it into the present moment. Now, all of a sudden, your daughter's 13, and oh my God, this is dreaded. It's not. It's neutral. She's just 13. Everyone has to be 13 one day, but we're bringing a story forward. So it's really an invitation to you from your child, because they are our greatest teachers, to look inside and take care of yourself. Why is this moment like a hot topic moment for you? What button is getting pushed? And how can you look inside and say, wow, this is really my issue. I was projecting it on my kid. And then we say thank you in our heads to our kids for showing us that mirror, and like you did at bedtime the other night, and giving us an opportunity to wake up, giving us an opportunity to awaken and listen to our voice, maybe the voice that was never heard, but we can reparent our own inner child. So our 13-year-old self is not the one arguing with the 13-year-old child in front of you. It's an easy trap to fall into. I've done it myself.
I love it. And I love the discussion around letting go of the labels, the dreaded teenage years. And like, I remember we had conversations when my son was sort of in preteen about teenage years, because even at that stage, he had looked at a lot of TV programs and he goes, teens are always moody. And I'm like, well, they don't necessarily have to be always moody. There are things happening in your body that might make you more emotional and moods up and down, but there are also things you can do to stabilize that.
Right.
And so if you're proactive about it, you can have a fun teenage time. You don't have to be moody. So you don't have to buy into the concept that it needs to be a dreaded period. And I think that's important for parents to recognize.
Right. Exactly. Because then you're bringing the energy of that into the situation.
Absolutely.
and you're only seeing it through as if you had glasses on that said dread, and you're seeing everything going on through these eyes of dread. Like, that's it. There's no other perspective. And we need to have lots of perspectives, and we need to put ourselves in our children's shoes.
I love it. Okay, I'm gonna recap for our villager, because I think this was really important for us to kind of dive deep in and begin to think about what is the foundation we want to set for those teenage years, because those are the years where I think our kids really need our guidance the most, but will be more cautious about coming to get it based on the relationship that we've built. So the first thing we talked about was what is really happening for your child in the moment, to kind of get so present and attuned that you're really open to understanding the inner world of your child. And I think that's so important for connection. And so remember to connect first and listen deeply. You can't tell what's happening if you don't take that time to kind of go within and get still and then be still with the other. I love that you're talking about that family boundaries need to be a collective discussion. What are we going to hold firm to? What will we have some more movement on and some more flexibility? And I like to say parents don't always have to be on the same page at the get-go. But at some point, you need to sit down and have that discussion. And so I love that you're saying do it as a family. Sit and talk as two adults, work out what are the boundaries you would like to hold as adults within the family, and then include your child to be able to say, okay, these are what we're thinking of. Let's get your input so that we now have family boundaries that we're all bought into. And I love that. And I love that you're saying recognize that they don't all have to be a hard line. What time you go to bed can be flexible, and you can allow your kids. I think what I decided to do was just allow my son to learn from the natural consequences. If he gets up the next day and he's exhausted, that's not on me.
Right. But it also tells him that you trust him.
Yes.
Right? I'm going to trust you to go to bed. And if you don't, like you said, the natural consequences is you're a zombie the next day. Oh, well, live and learn. Like, we have to let them live and learn. It's not life and death. It's sleep,
Yeah. And I think it's really important to recognize it's that trial and error sort of, and in our safe space, that's what it's supposed to be. In our safety, where we're still kind of there to look over, it's where they get to have trial and error, to trust their own judgment, to be able to test out what works for them. Because up until then, they've done what we've said. And there's a point where every individual wants to say, well, I wonder what works for me outside of what somebody else said works for me. And so I love it. So thank you very much for joining us, Janet.
You're very welcome. It was fun to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We're all about sharing and supporting this village. So if you found value in this episode, be sure to share it with your family and friends. And remember, this is a weekly show. So if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell icon so that you'll be notified of our next episode. As we always say in the village, you're just one connection away. With love and gratitude, empower us. Until next time.